Hi, I am Helen the Rooftop Knitter, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this vest in puff stitch. We're also going to be practicing changing colors, circular knitting and round necks. We are going to need 300 grams of size 5 yarn, 7mm needles for circular knitting, measuring tape, a 5mm crochet hook, yarn needle, markers and scissors. Before starting, I made a sample of 17 stitches, and these 17 stitches are about 12 centimeters width. I am using a 7mm needle and a size 5 yarn. So according to this, I'm going to calculate the proportion of how many stitches I'm going to need. Okay, if for this sample I got 17 stitches and they are 12 centimeters, I'm going to calculate how many stitches we take having 50 centimeters. That's half of the vest. That's a front or a chest. Okay, because we are going to knit circular. So according to this is about 70.83 centimeters. And if I knit in circular, I'll just multiply 17 by 2, and that gives me 140, which is okay because it's a multiple of 4. For this stitch, for the puff stitch, I'm going to knit multiples of 4. Okay? Once I already know how many stitches I have to cast, I'm going to start casting the 140 stitches I need. After casting 140 stitches, this is how it looks. We're going to knit circular the whole job, so that's fine. So what we are going to do next, it's few rows for a rib of maybe 8 to 10 rows in elastic rib, one by one. So that will be one knitting and one purling. Knit and purl. Knit and purl. Let's continue this way, one knit and one purl until the end of the row. Once the first row is finished, what we're going to do is continue knitting the one by one rib in circular. So it's always a good practice, leaving a marker before starting the next row. So this way we are going to know where the row starts and ends, because we are going to be knitting circular, so there is no way to know where it start or finish. Okay, so the next one will be knitting and purling. Let's continue knitting this elastic rib one by one until we complete probably 8 to 10 rows. So we'll be just doing one knit and one purl for probably 8 to 10 rows. I have completed 10 rows of ribbing so far, and what I got is 5 centimeters. So now what I have to do is starting with the puff stitch, and for that I'm going to choose any color I want to combine. So I got plenty of colors here. So maybe I will go for this one and this one, because I want to make something girly but elegant at the same time. Okay. Now we're going to start combining colors in the puff stitch. So let's concentrate on the puff stitch now, which is has to be multiples of 4 stitches. This one is a pattern to knit with a straight needle, so that's why I added one more stitch to stabilize the whole job. Yeah, but since we are doing it with circular needles, we're going to skip that extra stitch, so we just ignore it, and it will be multiples of 4 because we're just going around in circles. Okay, it's multiples of 4, so what we are going to be repeating over and over again is this little square here. Well, in summary, it's going to be 6 rows of knitting, and in this stitch we're going to knit them all together, 4 rows in just at once. I decided I want to start with the gray, so for that let's attach the new piece of yarn to combine colors. This would be like grabbing the yarn like this and then knitting as usual, inserting the needle in the next stitch, positioning the yarn and knitting. Then the next one, we just plain knitting until completing the 6 rows as I told you, according to the pattern. We just plain knitting. But before that, let's make a little knot here so that will keep us safe. And now it's time to complete the 6 rows. I have completed 5 rows so far with the gray. So before starting with the 6th one, I have to change colors again. So I will change to the pink one. And this row number 6 is very important because all changes are going to be done in this 6th row. Okay. So first thing I will have to do is changing colors again. So again, insert the needle into the stitch, yarn over the new color, and knit. I will continue knitting 2 or 3, but before doing that, just remember making a small knot here to keep the job safe, changing colors. And now I'm going to continue with the pattern. Here we can see that these 4 stitches are the ones that we have to repeat over and over again. So let's start with 3. So that's 2 and 3. In the 4th stitch, we have to count 1, 2, 3, and 4 stitches. Insert the needle into the 4th row like this. Then I can use only my fingers to undo all these stitches, or I can use the aid of another needle or a yarn needle or a crochet hook. Okay, because the last one is going to be the hardest one. So I undo all these stitches and yarn over and pass it through this stitch. And after that, 3 stitches again, okay? These 3 stitches are the same like these ones. So that will be the pattern. We're going to do 3 stitches and then this special stitch. 3 stitches and this special one. So let's start. So that will be 1, 2, and 3. And then in this 4th stitch, let's count 1, 2, 3, and 4. So again, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Inserting the needle into the stitch, undoing it. Once I've undone 4 stitches, yarning over and pulling through. Again, 1, 2, and 3, and then counting 1, 2, 3, and 4, inserting the needle, sorry, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4, yarning over and passing it through. That will be the pattern, and we have to continue this way, 1, 2, and 3, and then the special stitch until completing the whole row. This will be row number 6. I have almost completed the row number 6, so only 4 stitches left, and I will complete it with 1, 2, and 3 knits, and then counting back 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows, inserting the needle and undoing 4, yarning over and passing it through. Now I have completed row number 6, and what I'm going to do now is completing these 6 rows. So this is the continuation. This would be, we are here, so what we are going to do is knitting 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 rows again, and doing all these stitches in the 6th row again. So with the pink, I will pass the marker. So I'm going for row number 1 of knitting, and this way I'm going to complete 5 rows of only knitting. And row number 6, it will be changing colors again and doing all these special stitches to undo 4 rows and bind them all together in one. Okay, so 5 more rows of only knitting. Now that I have completed 5 rows of knitting again, it's time to change colors again. So I will be changing white, but what I want to show you is that all these color changes can be done without cutting any yarn, but I don't like it because it's going to be messy, and the finish won't be as good as like this. So once we have changed the color with the aid of a yarn needle, what we have to do is disguising all loose yarns. Probably I will do it this way. So I will start weaving all along like this, so nobody will notice that this is the end of of the row. So you see, it will be invisible, nobody will notice it. And I will do the same with all colors. Once again, you can do it without cutting it, just hanging it like this. And then I might continue with the white one later, but I will have all these pieces of yarn hanging from one row to another one. I don't really like it, that's why I decided to cut it. And also, when you are knitting, you will have hanging 3 balls of yarns, and it's very uncomfortable. I prefer doing it this way. Now, let's change the color. Once again, I will be inserting the needle, then yarning over with a new piece of yarn, with the white one, and knitting. So one more, knitting another one, and don't forget to make a little knot at the back of the knitting, so that will keep us all the stitches safe. So now it's time to knit this row number 12. So we'll be closing the second block of stitches. Okay, so we have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows of knitting, and we are number 12. So what we have to do now is skipping these 2 stitches. We will follow this block, this square, and what we have to do now is knitting only 1. We have done it already with the color change. So that's 1, and this one on top of this color is going to be the one that bind the 4 rows together. So let's count again. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Inserting the needle, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4 has to be undone. Yarning over and pulling it through. And after that, it will be the normal pattern, 1, 2, and 3 stitches, 3 knitting, and then going back 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then undoing 4 rows, yarning over and pulling it through. Again, 1, 2, and 3, and on top of this one we'll be going back 4 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, inserting the needle and undoing 4 rows, then yarning over, pulling it through. So just remember, this one will be the pattern. This one will be the first block of stitches, and then the second block of stitches we have to alternate it, so it won't be on top of this block. It will be half, and then the same with the following one. Okay, that's always the same pattern. 5 rows of knitting, and then on the 6th row will be 3 knitting and 1 of these stitches binding the 4 rows together. I will continue like this, alternating colors and stitches until I reach the level of the armpit to start opening the armholes. After few rows, This is how it looks so far. It's looking very beautiful already. So just as a reminder, this would be 1, 2, and 3 knitting, then counting 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows back, inserting the needle and doing 4 rows, yarning over and pulling through. Again, 1, 2, and 3 knits, then going back 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows, inserting the needle and doing 4 rows, yarning over and pulling through. I will repeat this again until reaching the right height for the armhole. Probably this one will be the last set of bubbles. I have knitted about 25 centimeters so far, so it's time to open the armholes. And for that, I'm going to change colors again, because I will have to start opening the armholes to the sides, okay? So this one will be the last change of colors, and always make sure that you have to change colors, or in any case, closing one bubble before starting the armholes. Otherwise, we have these all loose rows with no design at all, and that's not what we want, okay? So I will complete this row and start with the other color. What I have done now is splitting the whole job in 4, so that's 8 stitches for the armholes. Each armhole would be 8 stitches. That's 2 grooves of puff stitch. Then 60 stitches for the back. That give us 15 groups of puff stitch. And then 64 stitches for the front. That will give us 16 groups of puff stitch. Always remember that the chest is always bumpier than the back, so we have to allow probably 4 more stitches for the front, okay, for the chest. Now, what I will be doing is changing colors, closing the 8 stitches for the armholes, and closing the puff stitch at the same time, okay? That will be in the same row. So this would be like first stitch, changing color, and knitting the second one and closing. So 1 stitch on top of the other one. First, we're just making sure that all the stitches are safe. We make a little knot at the back for the change of colors. So that's 2, and then 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 rows back, inserting the needle, undoing the stitches, and pulling through, and closing at the same time. Then again, 1, 2, and 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4 rows back, inserting the needle into that stitch, undoing the stitches, yarning over, and pulling through. then closing the stitches. So now that's one more, and that will be 8 stitches. Okay, we don't need this anymore. And this would be like knitting, and 1, 2, 3, 4 rows back, undoing and closing the puff stitch. We will do this until getting to the other armhole, and with the same, closing the armhole. Now I finished the whole back, and I'm going to do the same for the other armhole. So this one was the last joining, so that will be 1, 2 knits and closing it up. One more knit and passing 1 stitch on top of the other one. 1 more and passing 1 stitch on top of the other one. This one is, no, sorry, I had to do it here. So that will be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Inserting the needle, undoing it, closing the puff stitch, and mounting one stitch on top of the other one, and then 1 knit, closing it up, another knit, closing it up, 1 more, closing it up, one, 2, 3, and 4 stitches, going back 4 rows, undoing all rows, yarning over and pulling through. Now closing this up. This one I don't need it anymore, and closing up the last stitch. That will be 8. And now I will just continue with the pattern until I get to the end of this row. Once we complete the whole row, what we are going to do is continue only with the front, because it's not circular knitting anymore. We got 2 gaps here. So what I'm going to do next is grabbing a yarn needle with any yarn, any piece of yarn we have there, a spare one in a contrasting color. So what I'm going to do is picking up all the stitches that are for the back. After picking up every single stitch, I will reserve it for later, because I'm going to work only the front first. Once I pick up all the stitches, what I'm going to do is reserving all these stitches for the back for later, because I'm going to work the front first. So what I'm going to do is joining both ends and make a small knot here so that we keep safe my stitches. And then I will just continue knitting the front. So this would be knitting the back side, with only purling it. I will purl it until finishing the row. Once I have completed the purling row, I will have to knit the front again, but for that I will have to start shaping the front armhole a bit. So let's make some decreases, but I'm going to skip the first stitch, and then for the second one I'm going to knit 2 together. That's 1 decrease, and then 1, 2 and 3, and continue knitting until finishing the row. Before finishing this row, only 3 stitches are left. I'm going to make 1 decrease here as well. So that's knitting 2 stitches together, and finally knitting the last one. I will start shaping the armhole, and then I will continue purling. The back will be only purling with no increase or decrease. Now that we are knitting the front, we're going to do another decrease again. So skipping the first stitch, then knitting 2 together for 1 decrease, and then we just continue knitting until we reach the other end. And when we reach the other end, we will have to make another decrease to the other side. I have reached the other side, so it's time to make the decrease to this side. So I will be knitting these 2 together, and then finally knitting the last stitch. I will keep doing this probably 2 more times to complete 4 decreases each side, and then I will let you know what to do. But please respect the pattern, so you have to keep changing colors and knitting the bubbles. I have completed the 4 decreases each side, and this is how it looks. It has a lot of shape already here in the armpits, and what I got now is 56 stitches, so it's a multiple of 4. And what I'm going to do now is continue with this pattern. I will complete one more puff or one more bubble, and after that I will start shaping the neck. I have completed 6 rows in pink already, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I got about 30 centimeters tall, and I will start shaping the neck. Okay, so for that I'm going to split the job, so probably I will leave 4 of these bubbles to each side, to each shoulder, so that will be like 4, 16 stitches. And 16 stitches to the other side as well. So now what we got left in the middle is going to be the neck, so that's 24 stitches here for the neck, and we are going to close all these. Okay, so it's time to change colors. So let's continue with the white, and this would be like, have to undo one. Changing colors. So now that I have the new color, so that will be first one, 1, 2, and 3, and then binding it together, 1, 2, 3, 4. Undoing it and pulling through. Don't forget to make a little knot here to change colors and keep all the stitches safe. So now we like 1, 2, and 3, and then one, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, and 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Then again, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, 4 rows back, undoing it. I'm binding it together. So from now on, I will close all these stitches, but finishing these bubbles at the same time. So that will be like 1, 2, and passing the first one on top of the second stitch. So that's 1, 2, and now we have to bind all these rows. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 rows back, undoing it, pulling through, and passing the first stitch on top of the second one. Then again, 1, and passing it through, 1, and passing it through. One more, closing it up, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, undoing all rows, binding it together, and closing it up. This is how it looks so far, and let's continue doing this until we close the whole neck. I have reached the other shoulder. This is how it looks. And I'm completing the last 16 stitches for this row. So here we go. This is how it looks so far. And let's continue shoulder by shoulder, so separately. Until we reach maybe 50 centimeters tall. Probably I will make one more decrease here. So this is 30 centimeters so far, and probably I will make 2 more here, 2 decreases, okay? 2 decreases here. So I will be purling the back, and I decided to do both shoulders together. So I will need another ball of yarn to join it here. But for now, I will just continue purling in here. Now that I have to continue with the other shoulder, what I have to do is just adding another piece of yarn like this, then making a small knot as well, and continue purling as usual. Now for the front, let's continue knitting. Once I only got three stitches left, what I'm going to do is 1 decrease and then knitting the last one. For the other shoulder, it will be the same. To run the neck, it will be knitting 1, then 2 together for the decrease, and then continue knitting. I will continue this way until, and then 1 more decrease each side. So now it's only 14 stitches each side, so each shoulder, as you can see. And now I will just continue knitting both shoulders until completing probably 46 centimeters. I have completed 48 centimeters so far, so I'm going to think about closing the job already. Probably at 52 centimeters, so this one is the last set of bubbles for this color. The next set of bubbles is going to be only half, because I'm going to do half here and half to the back. So we join it, and it's going to make one single bubble for the shoulder. Okay. So this would be. I will need only half bubble in pink. I have knitted half waffle or half bubble, and what I'm going to do now is grabbing a yarn needle and then picking up all these stitches and reserving them for later. I will do this both sides, and now I'm going to continue with the back and pick up all the stitches for the back. Once all the stitches are recovered, I'm going to get rid of the spare yarn we used to reserve all the stitches. So what I'm going to do is getting rid of the piece of yarn and start knitting. So let's attach another piece of yarn. Is the turn of the gray, and this way I will continue knitting, making 4 decreases to this side and 4 decreases to this side, the same way we did for the front. Okay, and after that we continue until leaving one of these patterns to start with the neck. So from now on, let's continue with the back, making 4 decreases each side, the same way we did for the front, to shape the armpits, the armholes, if you want to call it like that. Once I reach the same height for the back than for the front, so what I'm going to do is matching these two parts. Okay, so I will start shaping the neck for the back, and for that I split the job in 3, and these are 14 stitches to match it here, and another 14 stitches to this side. But I won't close all these stitches at the middle at once. I will leave 2 here for later, 1 each side. So it's going to be like a U shape and not a square, okay? So I'm going to start knitting the shoulder, but only half, because I'm going to knit half bubble or half puff, and I'm going to match it with the other half for the front. I started with the pink row, the last one, to match it to this front part, and I reached the neck already. So what I'm going to do is continue with the bubbles, but I will start closing the stitches after leaving this stitch, because I'm going to decrease this stitch later to make the shape. So this would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. One more, and passing the first stitch on top of the second one. That's closing one, and then another one. And now we continue this way until completing 22 stitches for the first row of the neck. Okay, just keep in mind that we have to close the neck exactly in the same row that we are binding the 4 rows together. Otherwise, we have this pattern, just plain knitting, and not this one. And the idea is having bubbles in every single row. Okay, so that's completing the group of bubbles. We'll continue this way until completing the 22 stitches. Once I close the 22 stitches for the neck, I will continue with the other shoulder until the end of this row. For the back, we will be just purling with no increases or decreases. It's just plain purling. Once we reach the other shoulder, we're going to run out of yarn, and then we have to attach a new piece of yarn to continue with the other shoulder, and it will be purling as well, just plain purling. Now, in this next row, we'll be knitting, and we have to make one more decrease here. Once we got only 3 stitches left, we're going to knit 2 together for the decrease, and then finish it up with the last stitch. Same to the other side. To shape the neck, this would be knitting the first one, then 2 together, and knitting. That will give us 14 stitches each shoulder, and from now on I will just complete half of this pattern. So I will complete three rows of pink, so that will be one more row of purling, and after that I will be joining all both shoulders. So now I have recovered the stitches for both sides, and what I'm going to do now is shaping the bubbles. So this would be one bubble here, and I'm going to be undoing them and just grab from here. Same here, 1, 2, and 3, and then going back 2 up here and undoing them. Now 1, 2, and 3, and then going back 1 and 2 and undoing 2 rows. Once again, 1, 2, 3, and this is the end. So we put all this back into the stick, and now I will be doing the same with the other end. Now that I've shaped the puff stitch, what I'm going to do is joining it together through the back. So we join these both sides. With a hook. So this would be like slip stitch here, and that's one, then slip stitch here, and that's two, then another slip stitch, and so forth. I have joined both shoulders, and this is how it looks. It's looking beautiful already. And the next step will be weaving all these loose pieces of yarn. For that, I will use a yarn needle. You can also use a hook if you want, but I prefer doing it this way. So we just start weaving to disguise all loose yarns. We will continue this way until disguising all the loose yarns, yeah, weaving all the loose pieces. And after that, we'll be knitting the armholes and the neck. I have hidden all loose yarns, and this is how it looks. It's looking very beautiful and even. So what I have to do now is the armholes and the neck. So we turn it around. Look how beautiful it looks already. And only the armholes and the neck are missing. For that, I'm going to pick up the stitches from the armholes. I will just start from the armholes. I think it's more convenient for me. And you can choose any color you want. I chose a white one because I want to have the frame in white. But you can choose the pink or any color you don't have so far. So it's your choice. To pick up the stitches, I'm going to grab a 5mm hook. Okay. And also, I will put the needles. So I will start exactly from here, from the middle, grabbing this stitch. And that will be my first stitch. Then second one in the next chain or stitch here. It's very noticeable where I have to pick up the next stitch. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we grab all the stitches this way. And remember, that has to be very tight. Has to be very tight this way. And also has to be a pair number because we are going to knit in elastic rib 1 by 1, so we need pair numbers. I will continue this way until reaching to the other side. I have picked up 71 stitches. So to make it even, because we need an even number, I'm going to put back this one to the left, and because this is exactly the middle, I'm going to knit both together. This way I will have only 70 stitches for the whole for the armhole, and this will be my even number, 70. Put a marker here. And this one will be the start of the row. So that's done, and then from now on I will be completing 3 rows in elastic rib, one by one. Once the 3 rows of elastic rib are completed, it's time to close the armhole. So let's pass the stitch. This would be 1, 2. I'm passing the first stitch on top of the second one. One more, and closing it up. Another one, and closing it up. We will continue this way until closing the armhole. You see, it's very noticeable already. Once I completed the whole row, the 3 rows of elastic one by one, only 1 stitch is missing, so I'm going to cut the yarn, then grab a yarn needle, and then from back to front, I will insert the needle into the first stitch. Then pull the yarn, and now inserting it into the loop, then pulling, and this will give us a nicer finish. Then going back to the back of the job, and the last step is weaving it. I will do exactly the same for the other armhole and the neck. Okay, but probably for the neck it would be 4 rows and not 3. Well, this is the end of the tutorial. I hope you like it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching. Bye.